So it's clearly that our system is broken and there's got to be an alternative way of doing this. And so we started CrowdHealth in 2021. We've had almost 10,000 people sign up to date. We've had something like 20,000 bills that have been funded through the platform. 99.8% of the bills that get submitted to the community get paid. And so we can talk about the mechanics of that, but in essence, what we're trying to do is create a viable way to pay for healthcare expenses without having health insurance. And so far, so good.
I wrote The Bible and Bitcoin for you, Bible-believing Christian, and in it I lay out the biblical basis for what money is, why our current fiat monetary system is ungodly, and how Bitcoin is the best and most viable, biblically compliant replacement for government fiat money. There's even a small group study guide in the back with additional resources to study with your church small group. Get it on Amazon or pay with Bitcoin at thebibleandbitcoin.com for a discount. Welcome to another episode of the Bible and Bitcoin podcast. I'm your host, Alin Armstrong, aka Pastor Coin, and today we have a special guest, Mr. Andy from CrowdHealth. Andy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man.
I'm really excited to talk to you because healthcare and the disaster that it is. I'm from Canada, so I don't know how much you know about Canadian healthcare. But if you think American healthcare is bad, my goodness, come to Canada. It is an utter disaster. So I'm excited to talk to you because healthcare is something I'm very interested in. My wife is a nurse, and we've had quite the journey since 2020 to today regarding healthcare. But before we get into healthcare, let's talk about you for a minute. Tell the people who you are and sort of your journey to the Lord.
Yeah. So I have a beautiful wife, Stephanie, two young children. I have a third in heaven, and we can talk about that if you'd like. I came to faith pretty late in life. I was 35 before I came to be a believer. I was raised Catholic, and so I was a good rule follower, but for sure didn't have a relationship with the Lord, and so that didn't really happen until I was 35, and it was thanks to my wife, met this cute girl who was going to church, and I was like, oh yeah, for sure I go to church. I'll go to church with you. And through that and a lot of sanctification, I became a believer when I was 35. So, I'm on a journey with that. I'm 45 now, so I'm 10 years in, but have done some ministry stuff along the way, and so truly believe that everything we do should be for the glory of God, including the company that we run, the marriages that we're a part of, the families that we lead. And so it is a core component of my life. It is the component of my life that drives pretty much everything.
Great. Love to hear it. CrowdHealth is one of the coolest things I've come across as of late. Now, I wish we had this in Canada. Unfortunately, I think it's actually illegal.
It is.
To have something like this in Canada. But anyways, we have a public system here. Maybe we could talk about that later. But I want to talk about CrowdHealth. Can you tell us, what is CrowdHealth? Maybe give us the sales pitch. What is CrowdHealth and why is it so necessary?
Sure. Yeah. Let me give you a little bit of background. This is my second healthcare company, and I sold my first one, and most of us in the United States get our health insurance through our employer. So given I sold my company, I didn't have health insurance anymore. And so I had to go to healthcare.gov, which is the government-run marketplace where all the health insurance providers put their plan options. So I got that for me, my wife, and my two girls, and it was $1,200 a month. And I think it was a $12,000 deductible, which basically means that we got to pay $12,000 before the health insurance plan pays a dime. And so I joke it worked until I had to use it. My little one, who was 1 at the time, was having recurring ear infections, and so we went to the ear, nose, and throat doctor, and he told us that she had a hole in her eardrum, so we were going to have to get tubes in her ears. And in essence, what that is just a little tube to allow all the build up of liquid in her ears to get out to release, and so she wouldn't continue to have these ear infections. So we went and did that. It was a 15-minute procedure. I got the bill, and it was $8,000. I'm just like, wow, like $8,000 for 15 minutes? That's ridiculous. But that's what health insurance is for, I thought. Got a note from my health insurance plan a few weeks later, and and they said it was medically unnecessary, so they weren't going to pay for it. And and so through a number of appeals processes, they were like, nope, we're not paying for it. So I had to stroke an $8,000 check to the local hospital. And as you can imagine, I was pissed. And I was like, I'm okay, if you're not going to pay my bills, I'm not paying your bills. So I quit. And me and my family of 4 have been uninsured now for somewhere like 4 years. And so we went through the process of being like, is there a viable way of paying for healthcare without having health insurance? And ultimately, we came to the conclusion was yes. And once we got to that conclusion, we're like, I bet you other people would like this too, because 250,000 families in the United States go bankrupt every year due to a medical expense, even though they had health insurance. So it's clearly that our system is broken, and there's got to be an alternative way of doing this. And so we started CrowdHealth in 2021. We've had almost 10,000 people sign up to date. We've had something like 20,000 bills that have been funded through the platform. 99.8% of the bills that get submitted to the community get paid. And so we can talk about the mechanics of that, but in essence, what we're trying to do is create a viable way to pay for healthcare expenses without having health insurance. And so far, so good.
Okay, repeat that number. 99.8, you said, percent of the bills that have come into CrowdHealth have been paid.
And that's to make a comparison, about 1 out of every 6 bills by health insurance plans get paid or don't get paid. So 5 out of 6 get paid. I don't know what that math is. It's 16, 17% or something like that don't get paid, whereas we're at a fraction of that. So we've got a community of people that if Pastor Coin broke his arm and it was $5,000, we'd go out to 100 people in the community or 50 people in the community and say, hey, will you give us $100? Will you help Pastor Coin with $100 for his broken arm? And if they say yes, then $100 goes from their account to your account. And at the end of the day, you'll have $5,000 to go and pay for your broken arm. But the cool thing about this is you're paying in cash. And so the doctor is getting cash at the point of care without having to build a health insurance plan and all that kind of stuff. And so you're getting significantly better rates than health insurance plans even get. It doesn't make tons of sense that United Healthcare, which is the 7th largest company on the planet, 10% of the United States healthcare costs go through United Healthcare. They can't get better rates than you and I can if we negotiate directly with a hospital or a provider. So we're getting about 50% better rates for our members than United Healthcare does, just by paying in cash at the point of care. And so we're taking out all that bureaucracy of payment and billing and things like that and getting significantly better rates. So that's the key to making this work.
99.8% is a crazy number. I didn't know it was that high. So what you're telling me is if I join CrowdHealth, there's a 99.8, and there's no deductible in this situation, if I understand it correctly.
There's no deductible. All we ask is you pay the first $500 of a health event, so you have some skin in the game before you submit the rest to the community. So, if in your example, to be more accurate, let's just say your broken arm is $5,500. You would pay the first $500, then we submit the remaining $500 to the $5,000 to the community. So, yeah, of all the bills that are submitted, we're not including ones that are like duplicate bills, and the first $500 of that you're actually paying, and we're not counting like if you're gonna trying to submit something for a boob job or something like that, clearly is not getting paid. We're talking about like eligible bills here. 99.8% of them get funded. But the interesting thing is the 0.2% that don't get funded are almost always from members who don't help each other And this is where I feel like there's a kingdom play here. If I ask people for, Pastor Coin, to help Pastor Coin with, his broken arm, they'll know something about you when you ask. They'll know, did you say yes, 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 yes to others when you were asked, or did you say no, 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 no to others when you were asked? So the bills that are not getting funded are bills being submitted by people who are, as we say to our kids, greedy grabbers. They're ones that they want to take, but they don't want to give. And so, 100% of the bills from people who have given have been funded. So, that's the beauty of this. And it's, look, I think generosity generally in our culture, you're in Canada, I would probably say that this is similar to the United States, has been on the decline over the last 50 years. I think love your neighbor has been on the decline over the last 50 years. And I think a big part of that is because I think government and health insurance plans have gotten in between me and my neighbor. There's a lot of like, I don't know, the government will take care of it, or the health insurance plan will take care of it. Whereas I think we're called to like, no, we are supposed to love our neighbors well. And, we're getting that stolen from us from, this government that thinks they should be the ones that help others in the community. So this is not a call for socialism. It's a call for love your neighbor well. And man, wouldn't we all want neighbors who take personal responsibility over their home, their family, their financials, their health? Because I want to be a neighbor to that person. And if that person has something go wrong, I'm going to be the first one to step up and be like, I'm going to help you, right? If that person doesn't take care of his health, doesn't take care of his home, doesn't take care of his family, and it's just a piece of garbage generally, then, there's a less of an incentive to help. It's just how we work. I know we're supposed to love our enemies. And so I'm going to get called out on that theologically probably in the comments of this, but it's just human nature that if we have a community of people who all want to take care of themselves, that's the community of people that I want to be a part of. And that's what we're trying to create at CrowdHealth is a group of people who take care of themselves. And if something bad happens, or if you have a baby, like others will gather around you and help you out. Like what a beautiful thing that is.
Wow, this is like just blowing my mind because obviously I'm a proponent of taking responsibility and against, taxation. I got the gear. Taxation is slavery. And in my country, it's like, well, if you eliminate public health care, then no one will get health care. And the way I respond to that question is always, well, you know what? That's what we're for. That's what the church is for. That's what neighbors are for, to help one another. So here's an example right here in the flesh of a company that has taken that principle that nobody thinks is possible, where people will voluntarily help other people in a community that incentivizes such a thing. So how do you respond to the naysayers? Like in Canada, how would you respond to a Canadian naysayer that'll say, well, people are just greedy. Nobody will help anybody else. We need to take the money through taxes and then deliver subpar health care with it. It's better than nothing. How do you respond to something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably respond to asking whether or not if they get hurt with an acute illness, one that will potentially take your life, who are you going to trust to help you pay for that in the most effective way? Would you prefer to go to a government that doesn't know you from Adam versus a group of people that you're in community with that have come to know you over a period of time? And you have shown that you have come to know them by actually giving them and voluntarily giving to them. Man, I would prefer to come to a group of people in my tribe, and in terms of the Bitcoin people, like, would you prefer to fund the government to take care of you, or would you prefer to take care of other people in your Bitcoin community? I mean, I think almost all of us would prefer to fund people that we, are in our tribe, in our community. Would you prefer that to fund people that take care of themselves through through direct giving to them, or people who don't take care of themselves, which is, you do that through the government? If you, where are the incentives? You and I are both Bitcoiners. Where are the incentives? Is the incentive when you give your money to the government and just assume that they're going to take care of you, is your incentive to take care of yourself or not take care of yourself? Given that you don't directly feel, nor do people in your community feel, the direct impact of you not taking care of yourself. I just think the incentives are completely misaligned when you're sending money to the government to take care of you. My second component of that is, do you want a direct relationship with your doctor where you're paying your doctor, or do you want your doctor to be paid by the government and have to follow government regulations on what you can and cannot do in your healthcare? I say this all the time. You work for whoever pays you. Guess what? In Canada, the doctors work for the government. In the United States, the doctors work for health insurance companies. In both situations, the doctors don't work for you. So you are actually the product. If you're not paying for the service, guess what? You're the product. And so, I've seen firsthand, actually, when you pay somebody, a doctor directly, the whole dynamic changes. They're like, okay, now you're my customer, not the insurance company or not the government. And so that totally changes the dynamic. And I think we want to pay our doctors directly so that they work for us. They have what is in our best interest, as opposed to what the insurance plan's best interest is or the government's best interest is. That's where it's, again, incentives drive everything. If you take care of me like crap and I'm paying you, guess what? I'm not coming back, right? And so why would we not set up that incentive system the same way for healthcare, which is one of the few, systems on the planet where that customer provider relationship is broken because somebody else is paying for something. So it's just a different worldview, I think. And a lot of times, I've learned over the time is it's hard to argue with people who don't want to understand. You've probably seen this in Bitcoin, right? It's hard to argue with people who think that the government should control your money. It's very hard to argue with people where they think that their government should control their health. And you and I might disagree with this, but I think health is even more abominable that the government is controlling than our money. Like, no, stay away from my health and let me decide what I want to do with my own healthcare. Like that seems crazy to me that we outsource that to the government, who doesn't care. They don't care about you and me.
Yeah, it's my body, my choice until it comes to healthcare.
Until
right?
it comes to everything else other than abortion, right? Like that's
exactly.
good on one side of the equation, but on the other side of the equation is like no, we can control exactly what you do with your body. We can force you, in essence, to take vaccines and things that we don't want to take. You're talking out of two sides of your mouth. It just doesn't make any sense.
Bitcoin Well is a non-custodial Bitcoin platform in Canada and the USA. That means every single Satoshi you buy goes straight to your self-custody. They offer free withdrawals, a simple 1% spread, and they have the Bitcoin Wishing Well, where you can win up to 1 million Satoshis by earning points and throwing the coin in the well. In fact, you get 5 coin tosses to the Bitcoin Wishing Well when you sign up at bitcoinwell.com/pastorcoin. I have personal experience with paying now, believe it or not, in Canada, I have personal experience with paying doctors directly. What happened during COVID was my family got COVID, and I was fine, kids were fine, but my wife got hit very hard. Now, we just had a newborn, and she wasn't sleeping as much as she'd like, and got hit very hard with COVID. And it got really bad to the point where it was like, man, we need to go to the ER because her oxygen levels were getting low and stuff like that. So we went to the ER, and you wouldn't believe the disaster it was. We literally walk into the emergency room, and I told the front desk, I said, listen, full disclosure, we all have COVID. Do what you got to do. And I'm not kidding. The lady at the front desk literally said, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. I said, where else am I supposed to go? I just told you we have COVID, this supposedly world-ending plague.
Killer virus.
Right, and I'm at the emergency room, and but a nurse noticed my wife was like looking bad. She comes, she's like, "What's wrong with her?" I said, "She's got COVID bad." They're like, "Okay." They literally put. I'm not joking. I'm not exaggerating. They literally put us in a janitor's closet. They brought us in this little closet, this little room with a couch, and in the corner there was like buckets of cleaning chemicals and mops and.
Oh my goodness!
I go, "Did you put us in the janitor's closet?" And they're like, "Well, sort of." Anyways, long story short, we asked the doctor who ended up seeing us, "What can we do?" They did the X-ray. She has pneumonia in both lungs, fluid. It's bad. What do we do? They said, "There's nothing we could do. Go home and drink water." And I said, and my wife's a nurse, and she's like, "Well, no, that's not the protocol here. You can give, steroids, not antibiotic. I forget what they're called."
Yeah.
But anyways, to get the inflammation down and so forth. They said, "No, that doesn't work for COVID." So here's what happened. I was at home praying, "God, if you don't intervene now, she's going to go to the hospital tomorrow worse, and they're going to kill her probably." And I'm desperate. And I remembered a guy who had COVID bad. I called him. He gave me a number for a thing called the COVID Care Alliance. It was a secret organization of doctors and pharmacies in Canada treating COVID underground.
Oh, wow.
And he sent me this sketchy link, filled out the thing. Within an hour, a doctor called. Within 24 hours, there's a bag of drugs on our front porch from a participating pharmacy that was filling orders after hours. Ivermectin, the whole deal. And we ended up paying, I think, about $800 in total. So what the public system refused to do, the private underground system did great. For $800, she got all the drugs she needed. After her first dose of the COVID cocktail, I call it, she was feeling better, and she recovered within a couple weeks.
It's amazing to me that you have to go underground to get medications that you want for your own body, and the government won't let you do it. I mean, that is an absolute crazy thing to me. Yet, on the other hand, they require you to get other medications to function in society. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So that's a beautiful, perfect example of like, okay, well, why do we not want the government to rule our lives, our healthcare lives? Like, it's a perfect example. The fact that you can't legally pay doctors in cash, which is the rule in Canada, is absolutely ridiculous to me. And we get a lot of people from Canada, funny enough, who say, "Hey, I tore my ACL, or I did one of these, non-emergency, had one of these non-emergency or non-life-threatening conditions." And they're like, "I got to wait 4 months just to go see a specialist to have my knee repaired." And we're like, "Can we go to the United States? Like, can you find us really good rate for an orthopedic surgeon in the United States?" So we will fly to the United States. We will pay for, my knee to get, scoped or whatever that needed it to be repaired. And then I'll just fly back to Canada. I'll pay for it in the United States. And we have lots of people from Canada calling us about that. But like, "Please, can you find us a good doctor? We'll fly anywhere just to get this thing repaired because I have to wait for so damn long." And you're like, that's nuts. It's crazy to me. Canada, a first world country, can't get their people in for 3 or 4 months. And I think during COVID, it was something like 6 to 12 months before you could even get in, if they'd let you in at all.
Yeah, it was bad here during COVID, and COVID only made it worse. And it wasn't COVID that made it worse. It was the stupidity of the government regulations that made it worse. They barred ivermectin. There's a story from my city where a guy had, or I think it was a girl, anyways, doesn't matter. They had COVID, and they had to go to the hospital, but they were taking ivermectin. So they actually took a pill bottle of ivermectin and shoved it in a teddy bear to smuggle it into the hospital. And the hospital staff found it and confiscated it. It was like on the front page of the news locally that this person smuggled ivermectin into the hospital, and the hospital staff took this legal cheap medication away from them, and they took the teddy bear too. I'm curious to know. I've heard you in other podcasts, and there's lots of cool stories. Now, if you're willing to share, of course, confidentiality and stuff, you can change names or whatever. What is your favorite CrowdHealth success story?
Oh man, my favorite. There's so many. I'm gonna give you two. One's a quick one, but I think it highlights how cool the community is. And I'll do that one first. We have, people have miscarriages, and it's a devastating thing. Lots of families go through it. So, and there's, financial costs associated with it. They're not big, but there's some, and it feels like almost every time that we send out a request for somebody to help with expenses related to miscarriages, we have women come back to us and say, that's a part of my story too. Like, I know what this family is going through. So instead of me giving them $100, can I give them $200? And you would never call your health insurance plan and say, hey, can I pay you more this month? But given that exactly where your money is going, people feel inspired to give. And I'm just like, man, I love that. I love the fact that people will be willing to give more to their community member when they're in a time of need. So, I get my request every month. We ask people once a month to help out. And I hear this often, they're looking forward to see, who am I helping today? I'm helping a guy in Austin, Texas, who needs help with a broken arm or fell off his bike or, whatever. It's like, okay, cool. I want to help these people, or having a baby or whatever. So that's always a cool kind of recurring story that we have. I think one of the other cool ones, man, is it's actually recent. We have a member in Oklahoma who his name is Judah. He was born, I don't know, maybe 6 or 9 months ago, has Down syndrome. And so of course I love him already. He was in the NICU for a couple months. NICU is neonatal intensive care unit, which also equates to really, really expensive. Got out of the NICU, and just last week, he had open heart surgery because he had a hole in his heart. And the doctor said he would probably be in the hospital for 4 weeks. And he got out, a little strong dude, got out in a week, and he's recovering great. And so I've gotten to know his family. His family is a group of believers, and so I've prayed with his dad, and we've actually sent out something. We have no problem with this, and you may have seen this. We sent out things on Twitter and social media and things like that. It's like, hey, we've got a member who's going through some really hard stuff. Like, we ask for your thoughts and prayers. And, we just get tons of people praying for these families, which is incredible. And I told his dad, and I asked permission, of course, from his dad to be able to do that. He's like, man, I think prayer works, and the fact that, little Judah got out of the hospital in a week as opposed to 4 weeks is just a testament to that. So, that's probably my favorite story. Little Judah, who, he's going to have a whole range of health issues going forward, but, the crowd is here to help him out, and I want to help Judah. I want to be one of the ones that helps Judah, next month with his, whatever he has going on. So, that's probably my favorite one.
Wow. Yeah. What other health insurance company you going to sign up with where the CEO is going to pray with you about your son's surgery? I mean, that's powerful in and of itself.
Yeah. I love talking to our members. I've talked to probably 20 members over the last week. It's just something that I do fairly often, just to be like, hey, what are we doing well? What are we not doing well? Again, I think it's a kingdom thing for me. Like, I just, when we went back and did kind of an analysis of CrowdHealth at the beginning of the year, we were like, what is our big differentiator? Whenever you're in business, you're kind of like, why would somebody choose us versus the other options out there? And somebody said it, and I think it was kind of the driver of our kind of branding is we love our members better than anybody else. And so now our branding is, just basically a big orange heart. Orange inspired by Bitcoin, the heart inspired by love your neighbor. And so we asked the question of all our members, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago, we said, hey, if CrowdHealth shut down, would you be very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, or not disappointed at all? because that gives an indication of like how valuable are we to others in their lives. And 96% of people said very disappointed, with the other 4% saying somewhat disappointed. We had 0% say not disappointed at all. So, to me, that's a win. We give all of our members little gifts during their birthday because we want to celebrate them during their birthday. We sent Judah a little care package celebrating, his return home. Isabel, which we just put on Twitter, which is kind of fun, broke her arm on a scooter. And so we sent her a care package. I think we may have even sent her a replacement scooter because her scooter broke. We want to do these things that show our members like, hey, we really do care about you. You're not the product. You're not a number. You're a real person with a real family who's going through real stuff. And so that's fun. I had a guy up in Montana, I think it was Montana or Wyoming, who, was fishing in bear country, wolf country. So he had a 44 on him, caught a fish, leaned down, the 44 fell out of his little holster, hit the hammer, went through his leg, went through his thigh, went into his chest, went out his back, and he had to get medevaced, from this little, stream in the middle of nowhere. I think it was Wyoming or Montana. So I called him. I was like, dude, how you doing, man? And he's like, I am candidly afraid that you're not gonna be willing to fund this because it was a firearms injury. And I was like, no, dude, we're gonna send this to funding. Like, we got you. And his wife, I heard her in the background just break down in tears, just being like, she was like, oh my gosh, like, can you imagine the overwhelming sense of bills that you get from something like that? It's probably $1 million set of bills. And for me to tell her, directly from the CEO, like, hey, we're going to help you. And so it was pretty cool.
Wow. I mean, we need to get you in Canada ASAP. There's got to be something we can do. I might have to become a lobbyist just to get
do it.
Because honestly, it's so needed. If this was an option, if I could switch from public to CrowdHealth, 100%, I would in a heartbeat. So, Lord help me get CrowdHealth to Canada. We need it. I think everywhere needs something.
The other thing we're thinking about is like, is there a way of doing this for Canadians? Given we have so many Canadians reaching out to us, it's like, can I give you something that's super low cost so that you can pay for it on top of your current system? But if you really need something bad, we could fly you to you could pay for the flight to the United States to get whatever you need and then get back home. And it would just be the big stuff, like, because I'm assuming the little stuff you can kind of take care of or whatever, but like for the big stuff, if we can get you to the United States, which, the United States has a lot of bad stuff going on here, but like, I think our doctors are probably the best on the planet, especially for really bad stuff. And if you have cancer or you have, even musculoskeletal issues, like, our doctors in the United States rock. Now, do our primary care physicians rock? They don't. They want you to eat, take statins and all that kind of crap. But like acute injuries and illnesses, I think we really do well. And so if we could provide something to Canadians that was like, maybe it's not $200 a month, maybe it's $50 a month or something. It's just enough to be like, if something really bad happens, we can get you to the United States, and we can't pay for it in Canada. But I'm kind of toying around with, how can we provide services to folks outside the United States?
Yeah, I don't see why we couldn't pay a monthly fee to CrowdHealth. I mean, that's legal, and then our deductible would be the flight to get there or something.
Yeah, exactly.
If and when it's needed, and then at the same time we could also help people in the meantime if nothing's going on with us. So,
maybe you and I need to do some brainstorming offline here at some point to see how we can make it work.
It's possible, because my wife has said if we ever get cancer, we're going to America. We're just going to pay out of the pocket if we have to, because here you'll just die. Honestly, you'll wait forever and you'll just die. So
that's the sad state of affairs.
It is. I've been looking through your Twitter account and seeing something that intrigued me. It says you're passionate about the intersection of entrepreneurship and marriage. I've never heard of this intersection being discussed before, but as I thought about it, I'm like, man, this is something I need in my life. During COVID, my wife lost her job as a nurse because of the ouchie Fauci, and so we've been, and so I'm a pastor. I don't make that much money. I tell people who want to be pastors, I say, if you're doing this for money and not for the Lord, go find a real job, because you're not going to make much money doing this. And this guys you see on TV, they're the anomaly, not the norm. So that was a big chunk of our income that got cut, that got taken from us because of government incompetence in healthcare. And so that forced her and me to an extent to become entrepreneurs. So now she has an online business, I have an online business, plus pastoring. And that has taken a huge toll on our marriage. It's been very hard to go from stable income to, we got every dollar we make ourselves. If we don't work, we don't get paid, right? There's no day offs. Um, as well, I mean, look, we had twins. Our first were twins. And being entrepreneurs might have taken a harder toll on our marriage than having twins. I don't know. Maybe she might think differently, but it's been hard. So what, what makes you so passionate about the intersection of these two things, entrepreneurship and marriage? I'd like to hear your take on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think probably because of something you just said, which is nobody really talks about it. Nobody talks to entrepreneurs about how what they're doing and the sacrifices that they're making actually have a real impact on marriages. And so I just feel like the Holy Spirit has put a passion for marriage. My wife and I are very involved in the marriage ministry at our church. I think marriages are the foundation of raising kids to grow up and love the Lord, knowing that the Holy Spirit ultimately does that. But I think without a strong marriage, that's just a very difficult place in which to raise kids who are going to grow and love the Lord and love other human beings well. And so nobody really talks about it. And I think we have this kind of cultural understanding that if you're an entrepreneur, you have to put your company in the center of everything and have everything else revolve around it. And that includes your family, your marriage. You can come home late day after day after day after day, and that's just what you have to do to be an entrepreneur. You can kind of put your faith aside, because what I do at my work and what my faith is two different things. And I think there's an intersection of all of these: your faith, your family, what you do at your work. And nobody really talks about that too much. And so I'm trying to battle back against this cultural idea that you have to leave your marriage behind to be a really successful entrepreneur. Starbucks CEO just got canned, I think about a month ago, because he came out and he said, look, I'm going to put my family first. I'm going to show up at 6:00 every day and have dinner with my wife and my kids, and I'm going to spend enough time with my wife, at least a week a year with my wife, to make sure that we're connecting. And he got canned not too late after that, too much later. And so I'm thinking about this. I'm like, wow, the West Coast in the United States, I think other places have this philosophy of like, work your ass off. And ditch your family, because that's just what you have to do to make a successful company. And I was like, my prayer to the Lord has been like, Lord, I hope that CrowdHealth goes well, because I would like to be one that can disciple other entrepreneurs and give them the freedom to love their family really, really well, also knowing that they can be a great entrepreneur at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. And so I just don't think people talk too much about that, because I think people are scared to say, oh, well, I'm going to put my family first above my business, because they're not going to get investors, or they're going to look at like they're slackers or things like this. And I think maybe this is kind of a secular viewpoint here. And so it's not a secular viewpoint. It's a viewpoint that I think resonates with secular folks. I get my best ideas for my business when I'm hanging out with my family. You know, if my mind has had a chance to like chill and not have to think about the business all the time, that's where I come up with my best ideas. My best ideas are not coming at the 12th or 14th hour of the day that I'm working. My best ideas are hanging out with my kids. They're taking my dog for a walk. They're having a conversation with my wife around like things that I'm battling at work. Like I can talk about work with my wife, of course, and I always get the best ideas from that. I don't think if I put 14 hours a day at work for the last 4 years into CrowdHealth would be nearly as successful as it has been. I truly believe that. I think a part of the success is my prioritizing my family over my work, and I hope other believers, will take that same philosophy. So that's what I mean by the intersection of marriage and entrepreneurship. How do you do both really, really well? And I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think they're actually dependent upon one another. You can't have a great business without having a good family life. You can't have a good family life unless you're taking care of business. That's where I truly believe.
Yeah, I agree. It's a tough transition for most folks, and there's been a lot of devastation. I mean, just in church ministry alone, how many families struggle because the leader is putting so much effort into the ministry and neglecting the family. And I've had this realization that, maybe some people might leave my church if I do this, but especially since studying Bitcoin, which has been strange, the time preference has lowered. And now I realize, okay, fine, I might lose some people, but in the long term, gaining my family will be greater for the kingdom than had I lost my family and kept those people. And the reality is, most of those people probably would have left anyways. Because at the end of the day, people are fickle, and even in the church, they're fickle. So I think it is important to put our family, our marriage first over business. And that can be hard because it's like, well, this month, what if we fall short on bills, right? You said they both need to work together, business and family. But that is a hard thing to balance. So if you had like maybe a couple tips for those who are in this position, I mean, even people without businesses, people who work, professionals, they have this temptation too to overwork and under invest in their family. So what are a few things you would say to people who are struggling with that balance?
Yeah, I think especially for males out there, I come from a male perspective, so I can kind of only give one side of the coin here. I think my wife wants to be felt chosen first, or not to have my business be chosen over her. So when you have a decision to make, I could spend more time at work or I could go home. What decisions are you making? I would ask you to really consider choosing your wife over your job, and make sure you do that in times in which she knows it. I will, if my wife calls me, if my wife were to call me in the middle of this podcast, I would pick it up. I'm choosing my wife over my work. And I have picked up my phone in the middle of board meetings. I told my entire board, I said, hold on a second, it's my wife. And I said, babe, I'm in the middle of a board meeting. Is it something we can talk about now, or can we wait until later? And she's like, oh, no problem. I just wanted to catch up and say hi. I'll talk to you later. And that's it. But she feels like I chose her over, what I was doing. I think that's really important. I think having recurring, scheduled time together, is really important. Because with kids, you have a bunch of small kids. It is easy to forget each other through the hassles of entrepreneurship and other stuff going on in life, your kids. And so we schedule time, and it's just talk time. Like, come with a list of questions for your wife. They're like, hey, I want to talk about this. And it has probably nothing to do with what's going on in life right then. But, I like asking her, and we do this every year. I say, hey, what has been your favorite year of our marriage? what has been our hardest year of our marriage? You know, and so we take a vacation 1 week together every year. It's something we do religiously, and we always start with that question, and usually ends up to be like a 3-hour conversation around like, man, this year was hard, but you know, this year was great, and so what made the difference between this year and this year? We, you know, put each other first, things like that. You know, so we have our time together Thursdays at lunch. I come home for lunch on Thursdays, or we meet out for lunch on Thursdays, depending upon what's going on with life. And we spend, you know, an hour and a half together in the middle of the day where we're not, you know, wicked tired, because at the end of the day, everybody's exhausted. And it is, you know, on our schedules, and we make it most of the times, and it helps us kind of, you know, reorient and reconnect, and so you've got to make those scheduled times, I think, together as a married couple when you're doing entrepreneurship and family at the same time, or else it sometimes is the last thing on the list, and it, you know, down the priority list, and so it sometimes just doesn't happen. So I think you have to make sure that you allocate time to it.
Yes, good. I'm glad for the advice, because I know I need it and a lot of people need it. I know you got to go soon, but one more quick question. I forgot to throw this in, but I think it would be inappropriate if I didn't. Why did you decide to integrate Bitcoin into CrowdHealth? Because a lot of people would say, man, it's volatile. Maybe you hit the top, you make off like a bandit, you don't. So what, and how has that worked?
Yeah. So we've gone through a couple iterations, and we're about to announce another iteration here shortly on the Bitcoin side. But ultimately, you know, your main question here is why integrate Bitcoin. I think there are three things that I'm passionate about. One is changing healthcare. One is changing our monetary system, and one is changing, you know, what we put into our bodies. And I think those are all three very much linked, especially in the United States. We spend an ungodly amount of money, you know, printing dollars to pay for people's health care because we eat like garbage. And so, you know, I'm like, man, if we can impact those three things, then we've got a company that really does glorify God from my perspective. And so I integrated Bitcoin one, because I'm a Bitcoiner. I'm the founder of the company. I can do whatever I want to do. So if I can integrate Bitcoin into it, I really want to. Two, and it's actually just great marketing from my perspective. I think it's, you know, if we get a bunch of Bitcoiners, which are a tribal crew, as we all know, to get back behind something, there is real power in that. You know, if you went to the Bitcoin conference in Nashville, I bet you, and you went around the exhibit hall and said, "Hey, I don't have healthcare. Who should I reach out to?" I bet you 7 or 8 out of 10 of those people would say CrowdHealth, because, you know, we're Bitcoiners serving Bitcoiners. You're in a group of Bitcoiners who are helping other Bitcoiners. And by the way, Bitcoiners are healthier than non-Bitcoiners. I mean, I walked around that exhibit hall, and these people are significantly more healthy than walking down the street in Austin, Texas, or, you know, wherever, Buffalo, New York. And so you're funding expenses of people who are healthy, which by definition, your expenses are going to be lower. And so we're like, great, that seems like a great community. So I love Bitcoin. I want to change the monetary system. I think for Bitcoin to be ubiquitous, we've got to start taking the line items of our budget and start paying for them in Bitcoin in whatever way possible. I'm all about hodling. Like, I love it. I have a stack. Most of my assets are in Bitcoin. However, I do have, you know, my, you know, various accounts. I use Strike. I mean, it's just who I use to pay for stuff with Bitcoin, because I think we need that circularity of Bitcoin to make this really work, because I think the dollar is garbage. It's going to become more garbage. And, you know, especially as the Fed continues to pump money into the economy. And so I want to be on a Bitcoin standard, and to do that, I've got to start paying for things in Bitcoin. That is not saying don't sell your stack. It is convert things that you're paying for in dollars to paying for them in Bitcoin. That's what I'm talking about.
Andy, thank you so much. You are inspiration. I love highlighting people who are in the marketplace, doing things for the kingdom, making the world a better place, doing what Jesus said. go and teach people to obey everything I've commanded. And I think in your own way, you're doing that for healthcare, and that is inspiring. And I think more Christians in the business world need to take that perspective. So thank you for what you do. I pray, Lord willing, I can soon become a CrowdHealth member somehow in the Great White North, or the not so Great White North, depending on who you ask. But thank you again for joining us. Anything else you want to say? Where can people find you?
No, thanks, brother. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Where can people find you?
JoinCrowdHealth.com is the website. Join CrowdHealth on all of our social media handles. We're there. Even if you're in the Great White North, we're pretty pithy in our Twitter. So come in and take a look. We're worth a follow, I think.
All right. Thanks for joining in with us, everybody. Until next time, grace and peace. Your family, your nation, and your world needs strong men. The devil wants men weak, emasculated, and addicted to porn. This is why I designed the Slaying the Beast course to help men take back the dominion porn stole from them. This course will help you discover your identity as God's image, how porn leverages and twists that against you, and how with God's help you can turn the tables on the beast and live free. There's also access to a Discord server where you can have fellowship with others in the fight. You do not have to wait any longer to conquer this beast once and for all. Go to lifegiverchurch.net to get started today.